Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to episode 16 of Young Justice, Failsafe. We begin this episode in space on October 16th, where a giant alien spaceship is heading towards Earth. Batman in his own spacecraft that also has Superman, Martian Manhunter, Captain Atom, and Captain Marvel on board, and the two Green Lanterns that are also members of the Justice League, Hal Jordan and John Stewart, all head to the aliens and warn them to stop and to turn off their weapons. The aliens don't comply, and they disintegrate the present Justice League members. Seeing this, the rest of the Justice League members that are still on Earth see this because Batman had deployed some space cameras earlier. So they realize they have to actually defend Earth itself now on Earth itself. Red Tornado is about to head out to meet the other Justice League members, but he tells the Young Justice team that if the Justice League falls, then the Young Justice team are Earth's best hope of survival, and they're ready to take on the challenge if the situation comes to that. So, thanks to various news reports, we find out that the rest of the Justice League have all been disintegrated by the aliens. And it sounds like the other superheroes, at least the other adult superheroes who aren't affiliated with the Justice League, have also met their end at these aliens. And the alien mothership ends up landing in Smallville. And now, and there's also these smaller drones that came out of the mothership. So these drones are kind of just scattering about all across the planet. But the Young Justice team noticed that one of them is in the Arctic. They figured that it must have been attracted to the energy signature, the energy or power that's coming from Superman's Fortress of Solitude. And Superboy is quite surprised to find out that Superman has a fortress. So the Young Justice team's plan is to head to the Arctic to deal with this lone drone. Yeah, the lone alien drone. And their plan is to take the alien weapons and use them against the aliens themselves. And that drone is easy pickings since it's the only one in the Arctic. So we see them all head to where the Fortress of Solitude is. And they're all wearing snow-themed outfits this time. They're all colored white to match with the snow. Oh, and Wolf tags along as well. And it seems like they're able to get the drop on the drone, although Wolf ends up being disintegrated, but Superboy isn't really fazed all that much, telling him that they just gotta move on. So what's happening is Miss Martian attaches the cannon from the drone to the bioship, so kind of to merge them together. But she has to deactivate camouflage mode in order to start the process of merging the devices. But more drones start to appear. But the Miss Martian is unable to use her vehicle's weapons because they've been shut down for the merging process. And the alien cannon hasn't merged fully yet. So Artemis ends up covering for the rest of her teammates, but then soon enough, one of the drones ends up disintegrating Artemis, much to, Miss Martian and Kid Flash in particular have really strong outbursts at Artemis's elimination, but they're able to eventually escape, so that the rest of them don't meet that same fate. And Aqualad urges them that they have to keep going. They'll have time to mourn later because they don't want Artemis's fall to be in vain. So they end up heading to Washington, D.C., actually, to the Hall of Justice more specifically, to let the people know that there are still heroes left. to fight the good fight. When they do arrive in Washington, D.C., they end up helping out Wade Elin, who's leading a bunch of soldiers to face off against the alien drones that are presently there. And so the groups then agree to work together to take care of the aliens. They all head to the Hall of Justice, but suddenly Miss Martian recognizes a familiar presence. It turns out Martian Manhunter is still alive after all, but they question how this is possible since they saw him be disintegrated like his fellow Justice League members. Martian Manhunter can't remember though, and they end up suspecting that maybe he tried to phase through the laser and it was only partially so it ended up scrambling his memories a bit. And Martian Manhunter thinks that's as good of an explanation as any. But seeing Martian Manhunter around leads to Kid Flash speculating something. When he and Robin check out one of the remaining alien drones that was destroyed so it can't fight back, Kid Flash notices that there are Zeta beam radiation, the same kind of radiation that's left behind when they use their Zeta beam technology. So Kid Flash is convinced that no one was killed by the aliens. They think that, or he thinks that they just teleported them elsewhere. He thinks that there's a prison or a detention facility on the mothership that's currently in Smallville. In any case, though, Martian Manhunter is able to activate one of the Zeta beam gates in the Hall of Justice so they can all retreat to the cave. But some more of the alien drones arrive to attack, and most of the Unjustice team are able to make it through, and one of the soldiers makes it through as well. But Aqualad, Wade Elin, and a lot of the other soldiers end up sacrificing themselves to ensure everyone else's safety. With Aqualad gone, Robin ends up having to take over the mantle of leader, and he decides that they do have to destroy the mothership, as that's their best chance of defeating the aliens. And he comes up with a plan where Superboy has to be used as bait because he figures that the aliens will see Superboy as the greatest threat to their objectives. Miss Martian objects to this, but Superboy is okay with this, saying it's what Superman would do. The Unjustice team that's remaining, they still they give out a message to the people of Earth to continue to not give up even in these dire moments. And we see some of the other young heroes preparing to fight the good fight as well. So the remaining Young Justice team members and Martian Manhunter head to the mothership where they start their plan. Superboy distracts the drones outside defending while the rest of them sneak into the mothership. And eventually, Superboy does meet his end as well. And Miss Martian senses this, and she's understandably upset about this, but Kid Flash tries to assure her that Superboy just was transported into the detention facility like Artemis and the others. But Martian Manhunter says that his mind is clearing up now, and there is no detention facility. The disintegration beams are indeed disintegration beams. Kid Flash, though, refuses to believe this, but Robin says he's been scanning for any seeing if anyone is on board, but nah, Robin didn't find anything. But he says that their mission isn't completely without purpose because they still gotta destroy the source of the aliens' power, essentially. So they make it into the core, the room with the core, and in the end, Martian Manhunter and Miss Martian manage to escape, but Robin and Kid Flash are able to set up the explosives, and, well, Robin at least knows that they're not going to make it, and Kid Flash sees this too, but he silently agrees with his friend that they'll meet their end with dignity. And so the explosion happens, and Miss Martian and Martian Manhunter have to watch. But then suddenly another mothership starts to appear. So, yeah, this is getting worse and worse by the second. And Martian Manhunter says that they have to end this now. And he attacks Miss Martian, only for Miss Martian to suddenly wake up. And she's in the cave, and everyone is still alive. And Batman, Martian Manhunter, Red Tornado, and Captain Marvel are present with them. And they're all trying to figure out what just happened. Batman, though, urges them to remember because he says what they were in was a simulation, more specifically a training exercise, and they knew this as they entered the training exercise that was created by Martian Manhunter using his psychic abilities. And they knew that it was a training exercise when they went in, but they didn't realize it was a train to fail exercise. That's to say, no matter how successful they are, something would always happen to make the situation worse. In other words, well, yeah, train to fail as an impossible to win scenario. And they were conscious about it being a simulation when they went into it. That's why they didn't grieve the Justice League or Wolf when they were disintegrated by the aliens. But when Artemis was disintegrated, what happened was, while Miss Martian was consciously aware of it being a simulation, her subconscious mind thought it was real. And Miss Martian accidentally hijacked the simulation is what happened. And Artemis herself was convinced that she was killed by the aliens, so she slipped into a coma. Martian Manhunter tried to stop the simulation, but Miss Martian's accidental hijacking made that impossible. So he had to enter the simulation in order to end it. But when he got in, everyone's collective emotions made him forget about why he was there. But as the rest of the Young Justice team members were eliminated one by one, as he put it, the mental noise cleared up, so he was able to remember his purpose was to shock his niece awake so that they could end the simulation and prevent the comas from being permanent. And Martian Manhunter apologizes about what happened. He didn't think that a training exercise could be so dangerous. Miss Martian starts to cry about how she accidentally almost put everyone into a coma, and Captain Marvel comforts her while she's crying. Martian Manhunter, though, is shown to be quite exhausted as well, so Batman and Red Tornado help him up. But they quietly talk to him about how something else is on his mind. Martian Manhunter explains that while his niece isn't formally trained with her abilities, she still has the most raw power that he's ever seen, saying that she's more powerful than even him. And that's how we end the episode. Now, this was a doozy of an episode, and you may have noticed it's the 16th episode of Young Justice. And as it's been pointed out before, this universe is the universe of Earth 16. So that's why the number 16 is a recurring number or an arc number for the Young Justice TV series. And, well, it happened a lot in this episode, too. The episode took place on October 16th. And actually, now that I think about it, there were only 2 timestamps in this episode. The first one was near the beginning, around the start of the simulation. But the only other timestamp was after they woke up from the simulation. That was actually a pretty clever hint at the whole purpose of this being a simulation. Or yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a clever hint clever foreshadowing that this wasn't actually a real mission. Because true, in the other episodes, while there are times they don't always use the timestamps when switching scenes, they usually do tend to use timestamps to indicate when they switch locations, but they didn't really do that here. Now, granted, the fact that the Justice League were all wiped out earlier on kind of made people probably think, oh, this isn't real, or this can't be happening in the actual show itself. Although, maybe Kid Flash originally believing that it was a teleportation beam to a detention facility, maybe some people were convinced about that too. Maybe not. Who knows? I guess it depends on the viewers. But yeah, I think the big question was more how exactly was this going to play out. But it does bring up a classic story idea in mind, the whole only a dream scenario, or only a simulation in this case. But boy, did they execute it really well. It actually was... Actually, that's another thing. Thanks to hindsight, this episode kind of does foreshadow the events of season 2 in many ways. And I'm sure that'll become more clear once we cover the recap and thoughts for the season 2 episodes. But yeah, looking back on it now, this was great foreshadowing for what was going to come in season 2. And along with the only a simulation storyline, they do actually bring the events of this episode up in the next episode because, yeah, the Young Justice team don't get over what happened in this episode by the end of this one, and we never hear about it again. They actually do bring it up, and it does cause a lot of trauma. So I think that's why a lot of people also liked how this particular show covered the only a simulation storyline, because it did have some lingering consequences. And otherwise, what else can we say? Oh, that's right, yeah. Martian Manhunter did bring up how Miss Martian, while she isn't trained like he is, or at least not fully trained as he is, he doesn't say that her raw power exceeds his own power. And yeah, that kind of does tell you, yeah, that's actually a pretty big hint about what's to happen in season 2 as well. But I think it also does bring up that whole weak but skilled versus unskilled but strong concept, at least relative to various opponents, because you could have someone who's still very powerful compared to a normal human, but compared to an opponent, yeah, it's all relative. But I always did like that concept about how you could have a skilled opponent versus a strong opponent relative to each other, naturally. And, oh, that's right, yeah, the Young Justice team not grieving about their friends and family passing until Miss Martian accidentally hijacked the simulation when Artemis died. That was actually they did explain that too, because they knew it was a simulation going in. So I think that definitely helped for why people liked this particular episode compared to other only a dream or only a simulation scenarios. And otherwise, oh yeah, Kid Flash had an outburst about Artemis's alleged death as well, and that's another pretty big hint about things to come down the road. So more of that planting the seeds for future events scenario. So overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. This might be one of my favorite episodes from the Young Justice TV series. It definitely ran with the whole, the arc number of 16 for the Young Justice TV series. And they pulled a lot of surprises, and thanks to hindsight, we know there's a lot of foreshadowing for what's to happen in season 2. So I really enjoyed this episode a lot. And with that said, we've now discussed episode 16 of Young Justice on this channel. Take care, and until next time.